The first Mafia's definitive edition is a striking love letter to 1930 gangster and noir media, as well as a complete remake from the early noughties original Mafia release. It's amazing that we get to live in a time where classics from my almost middle-aged life are being remade with new technology and polished mechanics. Not only are the graphics updated, but the writing, story, and voice acting have all been redone to improve the overall quality of the remake. And, to say the least, from what I've seen of the original, they knocked it out of the park. As an 11-year-old kid in 2004, I had a copy of Mafia that was given to me by my grandmother for Christmas. I'm sure she didn't know what the game was about, but she knew that I was probably playing Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which was released the year prior, or maybe even some other free roam-esque type crime-filled shooty game. My family was not one that adhered to ESRB ratings on the boxes. I'm barely sure they knew what they were. If they did, I'm sure that they didn't really care. And neither did I, because I got to experience a bunch of M-rated games, which was amazing. What I expected from Mafia at that age was indeed another GTA, where I could go through and spread bullets with an Italian typewriter over some goons that deserved it, and I'd be tossing people out of windows and having people sleeping with the fishes. What was hidden underneath the hood was too much for my younger mind to jive with, as it had a much more docile pacing. I know I very likely just put it down, as it didn't have the flashy lights of Vice City and the amazing radio stations that you could flip through. Now, as of me writing this, it is 2024, and I'm getting older, I would hope wiser. At the very least, I'm becoming much more willing to let a story seep into my subconscious. Let a relationship build between myself and the characters of that story, and I am so happy that I did with this game. This video is going to be an analysis and introspective of Hangar 13's Mafia Definitive Edition. I'll be taking the story, time, place it's based on, and giving my thoughts and opinions on them. Needless to say, given this format of video, there will be spoilers ahead of us throughout all of the presentation. Before we get into this, I feel it necessary to say that the contents of this game, and indeed all of the Mafia series, have strong themes such as murder, drugs, prostitution, and major traffic violations present within. So, with that, we can begin.
You alone? No self-respecting badges coming in here unless it's the health inspector.
What can I get you?
Just a coffee, thanks. Dip your beak. No, thanks. Suit yourself.
Mafia's story begins with what we'll see is the player protagonist Tommy sitting in what looks like a cafe shortly before being joined by a detective named Norman. Norman arrived in town to speak with Tommy about some proposition that Tommy supposedly has for him. Being that Tommy is the man on the box art, it was alarming for me that we are opening with our protagonist doing what one would assume a mafioso should not do, be a rat. Right out of the gate, the story is intriguing, because why in the mama's pasta would our protagonist be consorting with law enforcement like this? Not only that, but we come to discover that Tommy's broke. He can't pay for anything, but is willing to trade information. The Morello case is what he has information on, and in return for that information, he wants his family protected. We're on the run and are being hunted by our previous Mafia family. Norman won't just give that, of course, without the story and information to help heat up the case, and he says as much. So, Tommy begins his story back in the 1930s, before he was a part of that family, when he was a cabbie.
No one ever sees the haired pen until it's too late. But you didn't get handed the heater in the nursery, did you?
No. I was a cab driver back in '30.
Get up, Polly! There's a taxi here! We'll be okay! Move it! Come on!
Where to?
Anywhere. Fast!
This brings us to our first title card, which is an offer you can't refuse. A legendary line from cinema, as it is the same line that Vito Corleone uses in the 1969 novel, The Godfather, regarding what he was going to do when he had to deal with someone and put them in his pocket. We're then transported back in time to Tommy, inspecting his vehicle before being thrown into a high-stakes situation with two goons. Mafia paces its gameplay and story beats out with the title cards at the beginning of every section. Between these title cards, we end up back in the cafe with Tommy and Norman, as these are the tellings of Tommy's affiliation with the Morello crime family. Moving forward, we will be taking it chapter by chapter and analyzing the story. With that, we're fleeing the police, gun to our head, as the two men are forcing us to flee the police. It's funny how in most car chases, the octane is high and the scenery is zipping past us as we struggle to keep control of our supercharged, NOS-fed V8 engines. But here, no. We're in an old 1930s taxicab. The acceleration is slow, the top speed is somewhere around 50 miles per hour. The sheer weight of the vehicle we are in is all too apparent as it leans from left to right on the sharp turns. The creaks and groans from the axles and cab putting weight on the suspension can be heard and felt clearly through the controller. They nailed the feeling of trying to escape in what is basically a low-powered engine and heavy steel box with 4 wheels. After we escape, we also get to take in the scenery as we travel over a bridge. The textures, lights, and detail throughout this first section is outstandingly beautiful. All of this attained without the use of ray tracing even.
What for? You want a little something from the Don or not?
Anyhow, after we evade the cops, we pull out in front of the Salieri bar. Sam and Polly, the two goons now named, ask us to wait as the Don will want to reward him. This isn't a request, no. Much more of a demand is how it came off to me. And then we get this lovely scene right after.
Compensation for your services. Any damage to your car. This makes us square.
This was so excellently pulled off. We were under the threat of death the whole time, and now we are waiting for a reward from the Don. Sam puts his hand into his coat pocket and bam, my heart starts racing. Did the Don want to reward me with a bullet to my head? Obviously not, because we're still alive to tell the story, but the look on Tommy's face and his racing to turn the car on and flee was so well captured with the facial expressions and slow motion effects. And with that, we're given an offer we can't refuse. Tommy's cab is all banged up, riddled with bullet holes. I'm sure there's some structural damage due to my own inability to control the vehicle, even at such a slow pace. What would one do without immediate compensation for the damage to their way of living? Who's going to get into a damaged cab car? This is the offer that is irrefusable. Tommy has no choice. It's either take this money or not have a job, accept the Don's offering or starve. The only difference is that if you accept the Don's offering, then you can also come back for more opportunities to get a slice of his pizza pie. And unfortunately, our protagonist takes a bite.
Salieri's guys. I was back working as soon as I could. But it felt different. You get a lot of time with your thoughts when you're a cabbie. And other people's thoughts too.
You there, driver?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you driving or loitering?
Driving, ma'am. Always driving.
The 1987 film Running Man stars Arnold Schwarzenegger in a then-future world where criminals are televised, running from people who've been hired to kill them, all for the sake of entertainment. In the opening to this chapter, we aren't doing much of that, no. We're still doing our cabbie job, getting a taste of what daily life was for Tommy back then, as it wasn't often him running from the police and getting shot at. Hearing the fares that Tommy drives around was triggering my 10-plus years of being ruffled and pushed to the mental brim by the older generation as they would bark some inane orders at me. I want an Arnold Palmer, but the way I want it is with the lemonade floating on top of the tea. Don't you dare mix it. As if when they take their first sip, they aren't going to be mixing the liquids anyhow. They do this kind of thing and then tip you garbage, knowing that doing this above and beyond meticulous tasks solely for their comfort while you have 4, 5, sometimes 6 other much larger tables waiting on you is a bit of a hassle. This is a part and parcel for when you work in an industry that is a service. Thankless folk who will take some stance of superiority or dominance over you. Such people that think you are lower than them. You are a servant. You are not deserving of the common respect that would hopefully otherwise be given to any other fellow human being in the community, and you'll act like you like it because that is your job. Needless to say, I won't be returning to service anytime soon. I'll take manual labor over that any day. And so, with what I assume is that in mind, we taxi around a racist old lady that forces us to turn off the radio and is otherwise immune to small talk from us, an Italian.
Here you go. St. Michael's. That'll be 30 cents.
The only tip I'll give you is to stop smoking in your vehicle. It felt like I was sitting in an ashtray.
Jeez Louise.
Sure. Whatever you say.
These Italians are all the same.
Whoa, dude. A man in a rush musing about the current state of economic depression that demands we break traffic laws to get him to an art exhibit quickly.
Maybe you'll understand. Until then, drive and quit bothering me. Yeah, I get you.
Oh, dude, I gotta go way faster. And an illegally drunk man has us drive him to Little Italy. It was interesting to hear the drunk patron and Tommy's conversation, though. I hadn't considered that being in the 1930s also meant that, at least in the US, prohibition was still well into effect. They discuss how corrupt the city is and how the police officers will, much like now, pull you over and do whatever they can to put you away. In the aspect of liquor, though, the consensus would be that they're only going after the people moving it and selling it. I didn't even notice it as I was playing, as I was expecting something to go down at any moment, but each of these fairs gave us a snapshot in detail of key facts about this caricature of 1930s America. There is racism. There is depression. There is prohibition. After their civil conversation, the fair tells Tommy that his family member owns a nearby coffee shop, and he should tell him Luciano sent him for a free cup and a break, which Tommy takes up. Some kindness, finally, after a day of carting around some unsavory and entitled pricks. But not all is fine after that, because Tommy gets a rude surprise after some of Morello's boys come and muscle Tommy out of his car. They're upset because he assisted Don Salieri, which of course is a no-go when Don Morello believes he is the one that owns this neighborhood.
Mr. Morello's a little bent. Shouldn't go helping Salieri's goons, huh? I'm gonna have to give you a beating, just so you always remember who runs this town. Make it so you won't do much walking for a while.
We're chased through Little Italy, getting openly fired at right off the get-go. A jaunty tune plays in the background. We see that for a cab driver, Tommy is a spry and limber individual, as he vaults over pallets and walls and sprints towards Salieri's restaurant to get some assistance from Polly and Sam, who are standing outside.
Yes. Jeez Louise.
How you doing, kid? Dino, Lou. You got business with the Don?
Nah, we're just trying to talk to that cabbie over there, that's all.
That right.
Yeah.
Well, this here's the Don's favorite driver. So anything you gotta say to him, you can say to me.
Is that right? Well, I'll tell you something, pal. We ain't leaving empty-handed, that's for sure.
Well, then maybe you ain't leaving at all.
Okay, then. See you boys around.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Go, Lou.
Cat's got a shotgun. What are you even gonna do?
Thanks. Least we could do.
Come on, let's go say hi to the Don.
Don Salieri? Yeah. He's gonna want to hear about this.
There is no historical or media reference to this title card. Through my research, of course, I only found that the first documented use of a Molotov cocktail was in 1922. It is popular to assume that the Molotov, or bottle bomb, or maybe the poor man's grenade if you like, was invented by the Russians as the name Molotov would suggest. This is not the case, as the IRA in 1922 filled bottles with petrol, gasoline for us Western folk, and paraffin, a flammable hydrocarbon liquid found in old gas lamps, known as kerosene? The Encyclopedia Britannica would further lead me to the realization that there was another type of mafia, or in this case a pseudo-mob, known as the Irish Republican Army, that would revolt against imperialist ideologies. From there, Finland, Britain, Hungary, and many others would use them as cheap makeshift anti-tank weaponry up until better solutions were available. Anyways, Tommy, Polly, and Sam sit down with Don Salieri in their meeting room. It's interesting to see the juxtaposition of Tommy in this room full of professional criminals. Tommy is wearing his jacket and cabbie hat, fresh out of a scrape with death, as everyone else is in nice fitted suits and well-kempt hair. It shows that the opulence of crime is tangible to Tommy, and I like to think that he realizes this as well. The Don offers Tommy a small loan to cover his cab damage again, but the smell of this pie is too great to resist. He instead offers himself up to retaliating against Morello's goons. It seems to me in retrospect that Don Salieri knew this would happen. He knew that any advantage Don Morello could take away from Don Salieri would be taken. A cabbie is obviously vulnerable. He will likely die for assisting me, and therefore, if I accept his help and reward him, he will have to come back to me for assistance. This is all but confirmed to me that we were in Salieri's pocket the instant that Sam and Polly got inside of Tommy's cab.
Buongiorno, Vincenzo. Ciao, Polly. Oh, she's gonna sing. Who's this then?
Vinny, this here's Tommy Angelo. We're doing a little job together.
All right, good. Hey, you just need bean shooters or rods?
Nah, we just need something to write off a few cars.
Huh. Oh, I got just the thing.
Before we go to get even, Polly leads us to a man named Vinny, a seemingly venerable member of the family. He is a lively fellow who handles the armory. Vinny is responsible for kitting out the soldiers for whatever task is at hand. One thing I do enjoy about this game is that unlike a game like GTA, you don't always have every weapon available. No, it's much more realistic in that you're given what you need, sometimes less, to get the job done.
Hey, genius! Get your head out of your ass!
The fuck you, Polly? You can't just sneak up on a guy like that.
I'm sorry, Ralphie. I'm just busting your balls.
See, you're still limping. Guess we got two cripples working here.
We ain't nothing alike. You got that, Ralph?
Sure, Polly. Yeah.
Tommy Angelo.
Good to meet you.
Like I said, Ralphie here's
Afterwards, we meet up with a stuttering boy named Ralphie, who handles the motors and cars that are brought back from jobs, assumedly stolen or otherwise. Polly jabs him a little bit, unlike Vinny. There is a massive power indifference here. Ralphie is likely under the family's thumb rather than a part of it. This shows because at every chance Polly can to display that power, he does. Because of this, there is a certain amount of resentment that can be seen in Ralphie towards Polly, and maybe even the rest of the family as a whole.
One day I'm gonna cut your brake line, asshole.
Either way, Polly and Tommy drive over to the garages that Dino, the lead Morello goon that was chasing us through Little Italy, hides his vehicles. We sneak around the back, get into a tussle, and burn down some cars. They explode, and the cops come to investigate, chase us, and we successfully escape them and return to the Dawn.
Hey, boss. It's done.
No trouble?
Nothing we couldn't handle, Mr. Salieri.
Good. Sit down. You see Morello?
Nah. But he'll be plenty pissed when his boys tell him what happened.
He's not going to be able to think straight for weeks. See, that's the difference between me and Morello. I'm a businessman. I do everything with this. Every decision I make, it's what's good for the business and my boys.
Once back at the Salieri restaurant, we get an outstanding review from Polly as we're aces the whole way, and therefore get inducted into the family. We also meet another player in the story, Frank. Frank is what I would assume is Salieri's consigliere. Now, I think it's important to point out that mafias are documented to have a chain of command or structure to their dealings. So far, we know Don Salieri, who is the, Don, or leader of this mafia family. From there, we've just met Frank, who is his consigliere, that is to say he handles the mafia's money and makes sure that everybody, including corrupt cops that will let things slide, get paid. We have Sam and Polly, who are soldiers or capos. It's hard to distinguish because it seems like this family is quite small compared to a fully fledged family. Capos have their own responsibilities within a family and usually point fingers to soldiers or wise guys that carry out the capo's wishes, who in turn carry out the Don's wishes. Both of these guys do a lot of heavy lifting, as we will see throughout the video, so I'm not sure they are full capos. And then the previously mentioned soldiers, who I've already explained the function of, and of course, us, Tommy, who I suppose he fills the same function as Sam and Polly, maybe to a lesser degree due to, I don't know, tenure?
Excellent. Now I'm starving. Luigi, let's eat.
Those first days in Salieri's bar were slow.
I'm sure I don't need to expand or explain the historical context of this title card, as an ordinary routine is what most of us live by, toiling away as the days pass by to make enough money to pay for things. Tommy was doing very much the same as he gets called to the Don's office to take care of some pending payments from the clients that patronize the protection services of the Salieri family. Not very exciting as far as mobster activities go. We head over to Vinny to get geared up, and he places our very first gun, or rod as they like to call it, on the table. Now we are excited, because if any gamer is worth his salt, if you're given a weapon, you're likely going to be using it. It's interesting because of the attitude that Sam and Polly give to the boss. It's like it's an everyday deal, boring, monotonous work. They didn't have to get kitted out. They already had their guns on them. It's like this is the day that a cop gets his first badge, or a lifeguard gets his first buoy, an astronaut gets his first spacesuit or something. Either way, we head over to the garage to grab our car. Ralphie shares with us his technique for getting into vehicles. It's interesting to be given the choice to break into a vehicle or to lockpick it. Sure, lockpicking is a slow process, but if we aren't in a rush and just need a ride, we can pluck it from the trees, oh my brother. The choice is what's important, though. There are very few games I can think of that have lockpicking vehicles specifically as an option of auto theft. Usually, it's just smash and grab. Our first stop is to a bakery, in which the owner of said bakery is defaulting on his loans and therefore is at risk of foreclosure. It's important to note that having picked up this and read it in-game, it makes not one lick of difference to Tommy and the boys. This guy is going to pay for the protection, and it's likely the protection from us. I wouldn't be surprised at all if this baker is simply shelling out his earnings to be accosted and assaulted by us. The alternative is to be muscled by Morello's goons, who are worse off. What choice is he going to make? Morello's boys obviously aren't sparing the rod as we've seen, so choosing the lesser between two evils is what he'd done. The tension here is light. We have our pistol concealed and are moving solo to the back rooms to grab the cash while our boys watch the baker. And just like that, we're out. In the second stop, we learn that Polly is the type of dude that needs to let off some steam every once in a while. I'm sure it's fine to classify him as a hothead. And from there, we make our third and final stop at the hotel. Polly gets shot and our routine day turns into a not-so-routine day. I tried going for the stealthy approach here, as I wasn't sure how the gunplay was going to work out, but even with that, I ended up getting into a firefight.
That was pretty satisfying, not gonna lie.
The gunplay feels good for an over-the-shoulder game, and it can definitely go south wicked quick if you don't take cover. Luckily, here I pretty much gave everyone dome. Yeah, I'll stick with that. The enemy family ambushes us, saving Sam, and escape with the money, and we go to pursue them. I found it hilarious that our boys were far more interested in getting the money back to the Don instead of being okay, especially when they knew that we were going to be outnumbered chasing down the enemy mob. I can chalk this down to plain old loyalty or maybe sweetening an excuse for the Don. There was a bunch of guys over there, and they all started shooting and Tommy died. There wasn't anything we can do. I'm leaning more towards the latter. After we grabbed the money, we expressed that we wanted to leave, but being a nobody is not in our interest in the slightest. After getting the cash back from what we assume are to be Morello's guys, we're brought back into a scene that depicts just who our enemy is, Don Morello. Up until now, the only retaliation we've seen from the enemy Don is Tommy getting bullied by Dino, which we dealt with. Now, however, we get to put a face to a name during a minor traffic infraction where Morello rear-ends his boxer Joey Crackers. Joey Crackers is Morello's prizefighter, much like Butch is Marcellus Wallace's prizefighter in the 1994 film Pulp Fiction. Basically, Morello hires Mr. Crackers to take dives in fights so that he can win the cash from the bets during any of his fights. As we can see, Morello isn't too pleased about the accident and proceeds to bash Mr. Crackers' face in with a tire iron. Police aren't going to do anything because Morello's consigliere had done a good job keeping people paid. The story from Tommy isn't well received as Norman, back at the cafe, believes the story to not square up with what he has on record. The question is, why would Morello actively destroy a high-earning part of his cash? Mobsters like cash. Mr. Crackers was a good source of cash. It's not every day that a man will agree to get beat up for money. Combat sportsmen excluded, of course. From here, Norman asks about any other scrapes with Morello's goons, and Tommy segues us into a fun-filled story about some fun he had. As for the first few years, it was more of the same that we saw from ordinary routine, with less shooting. Data from Oxford Languages, I googled this for something to write about, states that fair play is a, quote, a respect for the rules or equal treatment of all concerned, end quote. So when Salieri joins us in his restaurant and tells us about his great racer he has been betting on and is at risk of losing a fair race against a Morello-backed hotshot racer, we know that fair play is no longer our MO. Salieri asks us to go down to the track where Ralphie's friend Bobby guards the garage. We simply are going to steal the European racer's car, drive it to another garage, tune it down, and bring it back in an attempt to fix the race and secure Don Salieri's money, to which we say, okay, boss. We are introduced to the garage mechanic where we can store our vehicles and make our way over to the racetrack. We pop into the European's car, and by all that is saucy, it is fast. For the first mile or so driving it, I was hitting things trying to keep it straight. All the vehicles we've driven up to this point have been, as previously described, heavy boxes on wheels. This is comparatively a canoe powered by jet fuel. The faster we go, the harder it is to keep control of, which is par for course in racing mechanics. But up until now, 50 miles per hour was as fast as we went. This one pumps 100 miles per hour without breaking a sweat. We are on a massive time crunch by the time we get to the mechanic, who does his thing and returns it to us tuned. As we pop out of the garage, we are greeted with a new bar on our HUD, a vehicle temperature gauge. The acceleration is now incredibly sloppy, as is the turning, which seems to pull in either direction when it wants. Gone now were those sweet moments of unmitigated acceleration and velocity. Now we are in the moments of... Either way, we get the car back, and bada bing bada boom, our job is done. The scene then transitions to that morning on race day, partway through one of Polly's stories. This scene continues to color our boys as more of a happy-go-lucky type of group, as Polly and Sam were out doing some collections, and Polly was getting muscled in on by some big dudes, where Sam comes to the rescue by urinating on everybody. These guys are unhinged, in an endearing way, as we know the alternative would likely be killing the transgressors instead. It's good to know that those two aren't as murderous as other purveyors of this type of story would have them be. We then get pulled halfway aside as Frank tells us that Mikey, our driver, got hospitalized by Morello's goons, leaving no one to drive the car for the race, except, wait, Tommy drives cabs? I couldn't explain how excited I was to be able to race with one of these cars on a track where it's meant for that kind of speed. I also love Sammy's response to overhearing the conversation. Neither of our boys said anything but looked at us waiting for a response from us. Then Sammy shrugs and goes palms to the side like, yeah, get to work, buddy. The race itself was great. My driving was horrendous. I won, but not gracefully. This is the first and only time I was introduced to the car flipping mechanic. Everyone is happy with us, and we get good and paid. We then get introduced to Sarah, who'll be playing the part of our beau for the game. She tells us Polly is super drunk and we should go help our boy out. It reminded me of when you'd be out with the boys in town in a pack of 4 or 5 dudes, and you take a look around and, oh no, one of your boys is missing. Usually you find him in the bathroom or out back having a smoke, but sometimes, just sometimes, you find him in a pretty sad and vulnerable spot, like how we find Polly here. Polly likes a drink, another characteristic we can add to him. The car ride back has a wonderful dialogue between Tommy and Polly. The foreshadowing and exposition placed here is my favorite in the whole game, maybe even the trilogy as a whole. A drunk Polly expresses the opportunity that Tommy saw and has taken. He's protected from the bad stuff. He's done some bad things that Tommy doesn't know about. He also expresses that he can't just shut it off. It isn't that easy for him because he has no one to go home to, no way to remove or distance himself from what it's like to be at the brunt of this line of work. Tommy tells Polly that he should stop before he divulges any information or embarrasses himself, to which Polly conceded that it's correct. Polly needed someone to listen, and when he didn't get that, he went the other way and sought to bury these emotions with some prostitutes. We, of course, took him home instead. This simple scene sets the basis for what we will see transpire for the rest of the game. Polly wants something more, wants to get out, wants to have a normal life. He alleges that Sam is detached from the violent parts of the work, and where does this place Tommy? We know in the future he's talking to the police, which is how we are reliving these stories, but the question remains, why? The question posed at the end of the last title card is answered now. We get asked by Luigi, Sarah's father, to walk her home. Tommy expresses that she is a tough woman and how he hears it doesn't need to be escorted. But Luigi, doing the right thing, insists. Through our walk, we get a quick chance to see the role that Sarah plays in the world around her. She's strong, thoughtful, and generous. She takes the leftover fruit from the bar and gives it to the needy. She plays the mother, a venerable hero within the community. She also takes no guff. She's quick as a whip and intelligent. Not long after, we're confronted by the nasty boys. We play our role as a protector in classic one-at-a-time fashion. We do end up shivving a dude, but what is casual murder to a guy stepping in the Don, and Sarah's lovely evening? Afterwards, Sarah invites us into her home and displays some solid skill in the first aid as she stitches us up. Her mother would assault Luigi, and so Sarah would fix him up. It shows that Sarah is emotionally intelligent. She can express and divulge parts of her life to those she trusts. From here, the light and safe jobs are over. The game from this point on takes the stakes knob from 2 and gradually turns it to 12 moving forward. The Don is not too pleased about what happened the previous night. We get the order to retaliate. Frank tells us the enemy gang hangs out at a familiar bar and we're on our way to send a message that Salieri is not the man whose turf is to be messing with people on. He has an image to protect.
Sam turned over some guy's warehouse and, autographed by Babe Ruth himself, the guy said. I mean, that's horse shit, but they bust heads. You punks won't have time for questions.
Do we legit have a dude that just holds baseball bats for us?
Thanks, Vinny.
Like, do I not just have baseball bats in my trunk or something? Like, I have to go to Vinny to get baseball bats? It's wild. It's crazy.
This mission starts out just like any other, and before you know it, Tommy is exploding barrels and murdering everything in sight. We're also incredibly thorough in exacting vengeance by chasing down the pricks who are the leaders of the group. They end up wrecking themselves, and we see a test of character from Tommy as he struggles to pull the trigger on the surviving member of the gang. Polly explains that no remorse is to be had for these, quote, animals, unquote, and Tommy should remember, perhaps take solace in the fact that these are the very same people that possibly could have hurt Sarah.
Trigger without thinking. Guess I'm out. This one's finished too.
After that violent ride, we pop back into the Don's office in a friendly game of cards with the boys. Sam seems to be cleaning up and all is well. There are no repercussions or consequences from offing those two dudes who crashed the car. I'm joking, of course. It turns out that the one we, or I should say Polly, killed ended up being the son of a city councilor. The problem is that this is the exact slip-up a no-good Don such as Morello would take advantage of. Not only that, but the other guys who Polly killed, air quotes heavy, ended up surviving and could possibly point the finger at Polly and Tommy. This, of course, is another problem. The solution? Salieri has a plan. He already had a job for us, but now we must do 2 jobs in one go. There is a brothel that has decided to do business with Morello despite heavy investment from Salieri. So, we're going to go there, kill the manager, the owner, and a familiar twist red prostitute named Michelle that Sam seems to favor. Grab any money, and to top it all off, plant explosives to level the place. The Don says that if Morello wants to take business from us, he will inherit craters, which is the coldest line I may have ever heard in crime media. This shows that Salieri is not a guy to mess around with. He is just as ruthless and merciless as Morello can be, maybe even more so. Meanwhile, Sam is going to Galati's, the counselor's son's, funeral to make and kill the crash survivor to tie up a loose end that could severely land the family in hot water. A veritable mess we have all landed ourselves in by retaliating and not fully committing to a job.
I'll meet you here.
I'd like to make note of the chatter of the other members of the family as we are leaving. The family doesn't usually seem to leave messes like this that need to be cleaned up. Our mistake has brought down morale for the entire family, and it's all pointed at us, the fucking new guy. This also lets the player know that we're not the only moving parts of the family, and it is entirely possible that others could come in and take our spot, or even whack us if we slip up again, so tensions are high. As we pop into the car with Sam, he suggests that we do not need to kill Michelle, the twist. He wants us to just make her disappear, because he really feels for her and doesn't deserve to die because he likes to talk to her. It's almost endearing, because up until now, Sam has been the quiet one, follows orders, doesn't seem to show much emotion in the vile things that we've done. This shows us that he has thoughts and emotions and isn't just some trigger that the Don can point towards a target. What's even more interesting is what this says about his loyalty to the Don as a whole. He has outright asked us to disobey. Given the situation we're in, he very well knows what could happen if Michelle talks, but it doesn't matter to him. He likes, possibly loves her. We are alike in that we have trouble letting people who don't deserve to be killed, be killed. We drop Sam off at the cathedral and head over to the brothel. It's been a little while since we had some history, so I'm going to talk about brothels in the 1930s and the Great Depression. Picture the scene. Imagine you're living in the Great Depression around, say, 1930. Poverty is running wild and your day job of being a server is not going to cut it. But there is a brothel down the street because for the next decade or so, these things are still legal. A great idea. You get some documents to prove that you're healthy, as well as some more documents to essentially subscribe you to this brothel. You take 6 to 15 Johns, red clients, a night at $2 a pop, which is about $37.78 today. So says Google. Pretty nice deal, as minimum wage is about 25 cents or $4.30 in today's money, but back then. You finish your shift and let's say you take all 15 Johns. This earns you $30 or $550 in today's money for the night. Yay! But you have to pay your tithes to the house, which equals half of your total earnings. Now we're at $15 or $278. Still not bad. Oh, wait. Brothels also have protection, laundry services, and sometimes room rentals for their establishments, which, according to prostinfo.weebly.com, I know my research is sick, it could very well be another half to quarter of your earnings per night. You could be leaving with only 9 of those dollars, which is $170 a night in today's money. Still not bad? If every night is a good night such as that, probably not, but that is if every day is the best day that it could be. For Michelle, however, it is not so. Luckily, Sam sent her off with $100 as to not be around anymore, about $2,000 in today's money, so there is that. Either way, we find Michelle and do some light intimidation to the young girl to ensure compliance in true mob fashion. This is the first time we see Tommy giving in to the mobster lifestyle, as he is ruthlessly aggressive and curt in his tone. However, his soft side does show as he ends up giving Michelle the money that Sam had asked him to give.
Just don't come back and we're square.
From there, we head over to grab the cash after murdering some dudes, of course. We also plant the explosives Salieri gave us and go to escape out the window. We get very Hollywood here as we jump out of the 4th-story window onto an adjacent building. I couldn't help but think of The Matrix, at least until the explosives went and propelled Tommy across the way. From there, we escape the police after dying a few times, and I can't for the life of me see how we just happened to make our way to the church via the rooftops, but video games, baby. This also wasn't a part of the plan, of course, as Sam was supposed to be the one to take out the car crash survivor, whose name is apparently Johnny. We shoot up the entire church whilst the priest protests, as he should. Tommy has fallen so far as to try to convince the priest that because these men were thieves and rapists, it's okay that they're dead. From there, Sam runs up and kills Johnny. We throw some cash at the priest to make it even and for him to keep his mouth shut, with some light intimidation.
Good. Be a shame if we had to come back here.
From there, we have another shootout with the cops, and it's back to the same old, except we escape in a hearse, which was pretty funny. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you for watching. If you like it, then do your thing. I'll be pumping out the second part. This is about the midway point of the game, so just felt right to end it here. But thanks. Bye.